an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Lirael. Chapters, that's a good question. Chapters 27, 28, 29, and 30. Nope, and 31. I lied to you. In these chapters, Lirael gets given a pretty cool quest that she does not seem to appreciate or be excited about because she is still too hung up on being a Claire, on being an eclair. And Sam, I thought, had definitely killed a couple guys, and thank God he had not done that. I know people die in these books all the time, but like Sam accidentally killing a couple dudes on impulse, that was going to be rough. So, also, Margaret, what's up? Welcome back. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you very, very much to Abbey for commissioning this. She is out here in the chat. So guys, there is so much happening here. I'm going to start off talking about Lirael, I think, and then I'll go back and talk about Sam. Because Lirael, I expected this chapter, the one that is from her perspective, to start off with her getting a lot of information finally from the disreputable dog. I thought that they were going to have a heart-to-heart. I thought the disreputable dog would explain why she knew that this shit was down here and why she took her here. I thought there was going to be a kind of a reckoning for all of the weirdness. And instead, the disreputable dog kind of argues with her about the urgency of needing to leave right away. Even though, the first thing she says is, don't you think we should hurry back? She is just very inconsistent with the things that she suggests and says. And then, as soon as Lirael gets to a point where she is hearing other people's voices out in the cave and is realizing that, other Claire are looking for her, what does the dog do? She vanishes, completely disappears, and just leaves her to her own devices. Now, we find out later that the figurine is in her trunk again. So this dog is not gone forever. I never expected the dog to be gone forever. I didn't think that was what was going to happen. But if it turned out that the dog had only been awakened to lead her here, that wouldn't have been totally out of the question for me, you know? I am wondering exactly what it's going to take to summon her again. Because the way that it went down with Lirael the first time, there were charter marks that she shouldn't have been able to handle summoning that were almost coming to her lips and to her mind of their own will, and could have hurt her maybe if she, the way that one charter that she used to keep the stilker in that room to lock it in, that thing injured her throat so badly that she could barely talk for several days. So I don't know if she can just do that again. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that, I don't want to say that was a one-time deal, but I feel like she got a bit of an easy freebie on the first try, and that maybe the next time she does this, it's going to be more difficult. But I am really glad that the figurine is still there so that the potential remains. And she gets intercepted by a large group of Claire as she's coming out of this cave. And there are the twins here, Riel and Sonar. And these are the ones, if I'm not mistaken, that met with Sabriel when she was, rushing to try and get out of the caves before. And these two, I feel so bad, these two Claire women are aware that Lirael is desperate to be one of them. It's really hard to read, honestly, in a lot of ways, because, like, not only is she desperate to be one of them, but they have not been able to see her specifically in their visions. And one would think that this had tipped off Lirael to the fact that she isn't like everybody else. And I'm not, obviously she isn't like everybody else in that she's not a Claire, and that's all that she can really think about. But I wish that she would look at that and think about what that really means specifically, because it seems like it should really be a giant hint that however she fits into this puzzle, she won't be living an ordinary life like everybody else. And she should be a little bit better prepared for it, all things considered. Not trying to say that she shouldn't want to be like everyone else, because to a point, you can't help wanting to fit in. You can't help wanting to feel like you have something in common with literally everybody else around you. I do think, though, that the level to which she is clinging to wanting to be a Claire is a substitute for her developing other parts of her personality. And I don't mean that in terms of like writing. I mean in terms of her being a little stunted as a person. She is not allowing herself to explore. And it's funny because she's literally exploring the library and all of these different places and whatnot. And so physically, she's like engaging in adventures and exploration and all of this. But in terms of her mind, she remains so closed off to the potential of doing literally anything else that it's just resulting in her being really, I'm trying to find the word that I want, because one-dimensional is not accurate. It's just leading to her being, having so much of a one-track mind that if she doesn't get exactly at this point in her life what she hopes to get, there is nothing that's going to be enough or be correct or be sufficient and satisfying to her. And this is the risk that you run when you get your heart set on an exact thing. Oh, Abbey is saying she clearly hasn't read enough fantasy books, right? Being different, while obviously very difficult in life, being extremely different from everyone around you is difficult. As somebody who has often been a different one, I have really had it relatively easy. But it's often a sign that you are going to bring something to the table that nobody else is bringing. And that means that you are invaluable. And she doesn't at all seem to like even think about that. And Abbey says she's utterly fixated and it's like she stopped still at the age of 14. Exactly. And this adventure that she's being sent on it starts off really poorly, because these twins are trying to explain to her that she has this like huge destiny that has suddenly been visible to them when they have not been able to see her at all. And the whole thing, I'm going to read this to you. She says, Lirael, the sight may yet come to you in time. And be stronger for the waiting. And she's saying like might. But for now, you have been given other gifts, gifts that I am sure will be sorely needed by the kingdom. And all of us of the blood are given gifts, and as we are also laden with the responsibility to use them wisely and well. You have the potential for great power, Lirael, but I fear that you will also face great tests. You will meet many trials on a path that lies unseen, but you will never forget that you are a daughter of the Clare. You may not see, but you will remember, and in the remembering you will see the hidden past that holds the secrets of the future. She says that with her prophecy voice. Her voice changes, her expression changes. She says that shit like fucking Trelawney throwing her head back croaking. This is real. Lirael is unimpressed. Bitch, what is the matter with you? Fucking knock it off. I have had a lot of empathy, and I really like the writing setting us up to be on her side in terms of her desperately wanting a thing. But this was when I reached my limit of my patience with Lirael, because she is being told that she is still a daughter of the Clare and is being singled out to have a totally different ability, which should make her feel special in some way, which should make her wonder, what is it that the kingdom so desperately needs that I'm being, like, picked out, not only in this moment for this specific prophecy to be told about me, but I was seen so long ago to be important that there were objects laid and covered in spells 1,000 years back in preparation for me to use them. None of this is making any impression on her. You were important enough for ancient Clare to know your fucking name. They put your name on a door and created charters that would only be able to find you. Charter sendings that would sense who you are. You are the only person who could have opened that door. You are the only person that could have opened that book. You are the only person who could have picked that shit up and walked out with it and asked the door to open to let you leave, and it would. That's a big fucking deal, Lirael. Hello? McFly? Anybody home? Seriously, I cannot with the fact that she is still acting like not only the fact that she's not getting her sight means that basically her life is over, but interpreting them seeing her going on a super important quest and calling this special meeting and showing her a vision and taking her, even though she has not awakened, into like the inner sanctum, which they do not do, in order to show her. All she can think about is that they must be trying to get rid of her. Lirael, listen, sweetie. Where's your fucking logic? Where's your head at? Lady? Like, come on. You also look very different from all of them. You have to know. There is something different about you. Has nobody mentioned to her that abhorsons all tend to be dark and pale? I guess not. But, like, obviously, she's being given some kind of ability that is specific to death and the ability to use a version of the bells that the abhorsons use. And she cares not. I do not understand this at all. Wanting to fit in is a completely natural thing for a teenager. Completely. But after she especially has worked in a library, you can't tell me that she hasn't run across a million different myths and legends about a chosen one or one person singled out to go and face their fate, or novels or whatever that have like the person who is touched by the gods. And there should be some context for her, is what I'm saying, for being different, for being completely like almost the opposite in terms of abilities of everyone around her and how that can work out. And I just don't have a lot of patience for it. The grieving, I really do get, especially when they have to put the blindfold on her, because there's this whole thing about her being brought into the inner sanctum, and I'm going to read this. So let's see. The sight may come to you. When we saw you here this evening, we also saw you somewhere else, somewhere we labored for many years to see without success, on the red lake in a boat of woven reeds. The sun was high and bright, so we know it will be in summer. You looked as much as you do now, so we know it is in the summer coming that you will be there. There will be a young man with you, a sick or wounded man, one we were asked to seek for the king. We do not know exactly where he is now, or how or when he will come to the Red Lake. He is surrounded by powers that cloak our vision, and his future is dark. But we do know that he lies at the center of some great and terrible danger, and he will be there with you in the reed boat at the height of summer. So this is when they tell her that she needs to go south and find that boat, and all she can think of is the fact that she's being thrown out. And then they tell her they're taking her to the observatory, and it's like this huge walk, and she's like sweating. They have to climb for a while. And finally, this woman intercepts them and tells them that they need to put a blindfold on Lirael because she is, quote, a guest. She must be blindfolded if you wish her to pass. The letter of the law is strict. Guests must be blindfolded. Anyone who is not an awoken Clare is a guest. And Lirael is humiliated and starts crying. Now, this I get. You're being told that you have this like huge fate and we're going to show you and help you and everything, but you're also being told you so don't belong here that we're going to have to hide everything from you until the exact spot that we can trust to take the thing off you. I understand this feeling really painful and othering. I'm not mad at her for crying. I'm not mad at her for being upset about this. But she sees the vision that they show her. And I really thought, while I was reading, that she'd see this vision and it would change her mind about it all. I really thought she'd see what was in store and the level of the corruption of what, this horrific workforce that's all dead and all of this, which I'll get to. I'll talk about precisely what's in that vision in a second. But I thought that she would see all that and this would be what turned her around. This would be what made her go, oh, okay, I do have important work to do. There is something very serious happening. I am needed for something. But no, even still, she is seeing this as a rejection, as her being evicted from the Clare and the iceberg. Like, I just don't get it. I don't. So I'm going to read you the part of the vision that she is able to see. Because they create one of those little panes of glass/ice in the air. And she is able to look into it. It was a picture of a man standing with his foot on a rock. He was looking at something below him. Curious, Lirael craned her neck back for a better view. That made her dizzy for an instant, and then it seemed as if she were falling upwards through the blue pane and all the way up into the ceiling, falling into the vision. There was a flash of blue and a touch of something that made her shiver, and she was there. So she's standing next to this guy, and the taint of free magic is on this dude so strongly that she very nearly throws up. And she's not even, like, really there. But there it is. He's young, and he's clearly sick. And he's sort of, like, low-key doubled over, like, holding his stomach like there is some sort of pain in his gut or in his chest or something. And there is a pit below him that has been dug out of the earth. And she's looking down at these workers, and she's sort of like ready to just, focus back on this dude and not pay any attention to the workers. And then all of a sudden, she takes a closer look and fucking nearly passes out because this is so horrifying. This is an army of hundreds of dead. She could feel the chill of death close by. Oh, can you? Can you, Lirael? Do you think that's something that the Claire can do? You fucking idiot. These were dead hands enslaved by some necromancer's will. The blue hats shaded sightless eye sockets. The blue scarves held together rotting heads. She suppressed her instinctive desire to vomit and looks at the young man. He has no charter mark on him. There's no sign of bells. There's nothing on him that, makes it seem like he is the necromancer that's in charge of these people. And she started to reach out and was reminded of where and what she was when he spoke, because she can feel something at the curve of his neck that she wants to reach out and touch, which I'm going to say is where that little sliver has wound up that was dropped into his hand and infected him. However, I thought it would be in his chest or his neck. So maybe this has nothing to do with that. I don't know. So he's saying, why does nothing work? And a few seconds later, there is a flash of lightning. And none of the hands pay the slightest attention to it. And then there's a flash, only a few seconds again, and then another, and then another. And he's thinking to himself, he's whispering to himself that was 4 strikes in about 50 seconds. And then he calls out, Hedge. And there's this dude that comes up to him. A thin, balding man clad in leather armor with gold-etched red enamel steel plates at his throat, elbows, and knees. He had a sword at his side and a bandolier of bells across his chest, black ebony handles poking out of red leather pouches. Perversions of charter marks moved across both wood and leather, leaving after images of fire. Even from so far away, he smelt of blood and hot metal. He must be the necromancer the dead hands served, or one of the necromancers, for there were many dead. But this was not the source of the free magic that burnt at Lirael's lips or tongue. Something far worse than he lay hidden in the depths of the pit. Yes, Master Nicholas, called the man. Lirael noted that he waved the 2 dead hands that followed him back down into the shadows as if he didn't want them too clearly seen. The lightning comes more quickly. Ask the men if they will work an extra shift tonight. Oh, they'll work, shouted the necromancer, laughing at some private jest. Do you want to come down? I feel unwell again, Hedge. I'm going to lie down in my tent. I will look later, but you must call me if you find anything. It will be metal, I think. Yes, shining metal. 2 shining metal hemispheres, each taller than a man. We must find them quickly. Quickly. Hedge half bowed, but he didn't answer. He climbed out of the pit, leaving it to walk up to the hill of tailings where Nicholas stood. Who's that with you? Shouted Hedge. Nicholas looked to where he pointed. Nothing. No one. I'm so tired. But it will be a great discovery. Spy! You'll burn at the feet of my master. Flames leapt from the necromancer's hands and spilled on the ground, red flames cloaked in black, choking smoke. They raced up the hill like wildfire straight towards Lirael. At the same time, she saw Nicholas's eyes suddenly focus on her. He reached out one hand in greeting, saying, Hello, but I expect you're only another hallucination. Then hands gripped her shoulders, and she was pulled back into the observatory as the red fire struck where she'd been and boiled up into a narrow column of fiery destruction and blackest smoke. Ice shattered, and Lirael blinked. So, let's talk about this. This is obviously Sameth's friend Nick. clearly Sameth was right to be worried about his friend. I would like to draw all of your attention to the fact that he apparently does not know these people are dead, which is heartbreaking. Like, seriously, oh my God, that is so awful. He thinks that he's on some sort of quest to find some magnificent thing that I'm not even sure that's what they're after. All I know is that he is under the impression he's the one in charge. And I'm absolutely flabbergasted as to why this needs to be set up this way. Because there's something, I don't know if it's like accidental and it didn't need to be set up this way. Here's my theory. Okay, so you ready? Obviously, he's standing side by side with a bunch of other necromancers. Like, this is the one that we see. I don't think this is the one that actually enchanted him. I think this might be like another dude. I don't know how many necromancers, how many sets of these bells. I don't know what this is like. Maybe this is the guy that enchanted him and he just doesn't recognize him. Because he apparently doesn't remember that encounter. So it could be the same dude. Regardless, the little shard of metal that was dropped into his hand was meant for Sameth. And Sameth, while out of commission at the moment in terms of his ability to deal with charter magic that is going, that aligns with the Book of the Dead, is obviously somebody with power. So I assume that this guy was trying to get some real honest to God abhorse and blood involved in this search and this operation for some reason. And Nick, I feel like what happened is the shard of metal was more like a computer chip that was programmed to make him do a certain thing. And Nick is not the guy that he needed. So he's like still he's going through the same motions that Sameth would be forced to go through as well had he been actually targeted properly. But he doesn't have the abilities to exploit. And ordinarily, this guy would realize, I fucked up, I don't need you, I'm going to kill you. But he has assessed that this is actually one of Sameth's friends, and he has encouraged Sameth to write the letter and tell him all of this suspicious shit to lure Sameth to him in a panic to save his friend. And then he gets Sameth anyway, and he can take the shard out of his friend, probably killing him, and insert it into Sameth instead. For right now, he can give this guy the impression that he's after some sort of relic. Again, I don't know what he's after, because it could be these two halves of a sphere that he's talking about. That could be literally what the necromancer himself is after. Or he could have implanted an idea of some sort of artifact that isn't even real in Nick's head to make him have some sort of mission that he believes he's on, and keep him focused and docile and out of the way, pretty much. And I feel like that is the theory that makes the most sense to me, coupled with the fact that Sameth is going to come upon Nick if he ever tracks him down to this location. And Nick is going to seem like his friend. It's not going to be like he sees his friend off in the corner tied up and he's suddenly like, oh, clearly this is a hostage situation and they were trying to entrap me. He's just going to see his friend standing on a hillside, not looking great, but alone and apparently operating on his own will. And it will seem very, especially because Sameth is clearly an idiot, it will seem harmless and he will walk into this trap all the more readily. I could see, in fact, him shaking hands with his friend or giving him a hug and that little piece of metal jumping from one body to the next automatically. Like, that is the part that I am dreading, is them actually coming upon one another, because I am worried what that's going to do. And I feel really bad for Nick for getting roped into this, but I just don't see Nick coming out of this alive. And it's sad because not only is Nick like the first person that has made Sameth happy to hear about and be around in a while, but also Nick, in his like brief moment of being a POV character, is a very capable, interesting person with, you know, a clarity of mind in a crisis that you don't want to lose, because those kinds of people are really, really rare. So we're coming up upon a time of war, clearly, and this dude is going to be, you know, probably taken out before anything can be done with him to help their cause, and that's a huge loss. So that's my theory. And I am really like, when he says probably just another hallucination, that's the one that I have no explanation for, because I assume the other Claire have maybe appeared and been able to see, but it feels like I don't know how easy it is for all of them to travel in that way. It feels like it's sort of like astral projection. So who else has he been seeing, you know? And of course, Lirael, she comes back from this fucking vision. Does she ask, what the fuck was that? Does she say, who is this guy and why does he not seem to know that these people are dead? Does she go, what is that necromancer? What's his name? What's he doing? Does she ask, what is it they're digging for? No, she does not. She asks, is that what it's like to have the sight? Lirael, if you don't get your head right, I'm going to smack you. You need to get your shit together, bitch. There is an army of the dead digging a trench near a place that is attracting tons of fucking lightning. Maybe pay attention! Okay? Stay on task. Fuck. Ugh. She annoys me. Like, when they say that that's not really what it's like, she turns and looks up at the ceiling and notices that all the Claire are leaving. There seemed to be many exits from the observatory. Soon she would take one herself, never to return again. What, Lirael began, forcing herself to think about the vision. What am I supposed to do? Forcing herself to think about the vision. If you don't wake up and realize that this is an army of the dead, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're lucky that there are like 1,000-year-old Claire to vouch for you, because I'd really start to have my doubts about you right now, lady. Okay. So they say that the man Nicholas is key, and that they think when she finds him, she will know what to do. She says, we just tried to see around the Red Lake for a long time. Then we saw you in the room down below, so we knew where to find you. Then we saw this vision that we just showed you, and then we saw the vision of you with the man in the boat in the lake. Not the man in the boat. And she says, but he's with a necromancer. They're digging up something terrible. Shouldn't we tell the abhorsen? Oh, sweetie, you're so stupid. Pat your little head. You're so dumb. We have sent messages, but the abhorsen and the king are in ancestry. They're dealing, basically, there's a whole bunch of other shit going badly that they are trying to deal with. And this is on you. We saw you doing XYZ, so guess what you're doing? XYZ. End of story. And they're asking her if there's something special that they can give her to take. And she's thinking over things about how she needs her outdoor stuff, her books, yada, yada, yada. And she asks if anybody can come with her, and they tell her that they saw her going on her own. So it has to be that she goes alone. I would love to know if there has ever been a Claire who was like, I saw you leaving alone, but fuck it, I'm going with you. I would really love to know if they have ever just tried to not do what a vision told them was going to happen. I imagine that their visions are pretty much what happens, period. And even if they said they were going with the person, something would occur to prevent them from going. It'd be like a Greek myth where as much as you hear about your fate, and the more you try to avoid it, the more inevitable it becomes. That's my suspicion. But I would just like a little bit of experimentation there. I'd like a little bit of questioning, you know. We must also outfit you with a bow and sword as befits a daughter of the Clare gone a-voyaging. I'm not very good with the sword, Lirael said in a small voice, choking a little at being called a daughter of the Clare. Those words, so long sought, sounded empty to her now. I'm all right with a bow. And apparently she's all right with a bow because she used it to shoot rats in the library. And they had stayed, she knew, to make sure she was blindfolded. She looked away and took her scarf off, folding it with slow, deliberate movements. Then she tied it across her eyes and stood stiffly, waiting for Sinar and Riel to take her arms. I am sorry, said Sinar and Riel at the same time, their voices blending into one. They sounded to her as if they were apologizing, not just for the blindfold, but for Lirael's whole life. So, I'm sure they kind of are, because low-key, as angry as I am with her for not understanding how hugely significant all of this is, and putting no effort into trying to understand it, it does sound like her life is about to suck big time. So, they could be apologizing for her whole life, because this seems like they are all getting out of this easy. They get to sit in their fucking glacier and look at shit, and then tell people, hey, watch out, this thing's happening, do this, do that. She's the one that has to go out there and fucking find a necromancer with an army of the dead digging a hole. So I would say they should apologize to her. Aunt Kirith comes up to her at this point and is saying, it'll be like your mother all over again, going off to who knows where and getting involved with who knows who and who knows what. Why, you might even come back. And at this point, Sinar snaps at her and says, enough. And apparently, Kirith does not get spoken to like this ever, and is really shocked. And they have to sort of have like a dick measuring contest and be like, we are the authorities here. So you can try and come at us, but you need to shut the fuck up and listen. And she finally does. And Kirith comes up to Lirael later and tells her, like, she basically apologizes and was like, I didn't mean that, like, it might have sounded like I was being cruel about your mom. And that's not what I meant. I'm just under a lot of strain. She was my little sister and I really loved her. And she says, perhaps I haven't always shown you, well, it's hard when you can't see how others feel or will feel about you. What I mean to say is that I loved your mother, and I love you too. I know, Auntie, replied Lirael, not looking back as she threw her coat back in the chest. Even a year ago, she would have been given anything to hear those words, to feel that she belonged. Now it was too late. She was leaving the glacier, leaving it as her mother had done years before, when she had abandoned her daughter seemingly without a care. But that was all history, Lirael thought. I can leave it behind, start my story afresh. I don't need to know why my mother left or who my father was. I don't need to know, she repeated to herself. I don't need to know. But while she mumbled those words under her breath, her mind kept turning to the book of remembrance and forgetting in the bag at her side, and the pipes and dark mirror in her waistcoat pockets. She didn't need to know what had happened in the past, but while she had always been alone among the Clare for her blindness to the future, now she was alone in another way as well. In a perverse reversal of all her hopes and dreams, she had been granted the exact opposite of her heart's desire. For with the dark mirror and her newfound knowledge, she could see into the past. So, that's interesting. I'm very curious about what's going on with her abilities there and what in the past is going to help. But it's weird how she acts like that's like less important. If I feel like human beings in general respect history far too little, and they respect it in all the wrong ways. Everything about what we think and believe and do is built on something from a long time ago that few enough people questioned that it remains to this day. And we only seem to, the history was written by the victors is certainly a huge part of that. But there's also a refusal to look at patterns that is just an inherent human trait, because we want to act as if we can learn a lesson and then be done with it as a society, as a race of creature, that we can overcome an obstacle, a terrible period of history, and then leave it behind and never do that same exact shit all over again. And yet we do. Again and again and again and again and again and again and again. If we could look at our past with real clarity and honesty, I feel like so much could be accomplished. But the United States in particular just refuses to do that. And so we are where we are. And so we are being led by whom we are being led by. And it is a nightmare, and it is a repetition of something from, at this point, 70 years ago, 60 years ago. And we are just walking right down that same shit, doing that same shit all over again, acting like this is all new because we're fucking stupid. And I wish so much that she could understand what being able to see into the past was like in terms of its power and the abilities and possibilities open to her now. But no, she cannot. So let's go to chapter 27, back up and talk about Sam. Sam is stupid. Bless his little heart. Lirael isn't as stupid as Sam. She's stupid in a very specific way, in a very blinded sort of way. Sam is stupid in that he is a privileged young man who has no idea how to be like a normal average person, because he has no context for what that even means. So Sam wakes up, and his father is already leaving the castle and did not come to say goodbye to him, which frankly I am baffled by. His father should have come to his bedchamber and woken him up and been like, hey dude, I'm heading out, and given him a hug goodbye. But he doesn't do that. This causes Sam some anxiety, because he had been planning to go to his father to ask him what to do with the letter that he got from Nick, with his reservations about the Book of the Dead, and now he has been robbed of that chance. So now he has to just make his own decisions, and he does not care for that. He decides that he is just going to go ahead and try and help Nick. He's going to head out. This is exactly the perfect excuse to get out. And he's all ready to walk out with this glamour that he's laid upon himself, where he's got a mustache and goatee, and his hair is a slightly different color, and he's just just looks different enough that it should be fine. And then finally starts to really consider all of the pieces that are at play here. The guards aren't just going to let some stranger walk up out of the prince's chamber and and go away. They're going to ask questions. They're going to check the chamber. They're going to realize that Sam is gone. They're going to report to his sister, who's going to start a search for him. And she may not have magical ability, but there are other people around who must, and they will be able to figure out what's happened. Not only that, but he doesn't have any actual supplies or anything that he needs. So he decides what he's going to do is make up a story about how he needs to be sequestered for 3 days to read something from the Book of the Dead and not be disturbed. And makes a charter sending of himself that is a passable impression, complete with like voice to tell people to go away or come back later. And that should buy him a little time and make people think that he's still in there. And then he transforms his appearance and sneaks out of the castle. And I, like, the whole way that this goes down is so funny. Like, first of all, he purposefully leaves behind the Abhorsen Bells and the Book of the Dead, because he is just so incredibly short-sighted that I want to slap and shake him. He heads out and he's like, man, these bags, they're a lot heavier than I expected. And we get a list of the things that he's brought with him. Guys, he couldn't think of anything to leave behind, and he was taking just the bare essentials. A cloak, spare shirts, trousers, and underclothes, a sewing kit, a bag of soaps and toiletries with a razor he hardly needed to use, a copy of the very useful guide, some friction matches, slippers, 2 gold bars, an oilskin square that could be used as a makeshift tent, a bottle of brandy, a piece of salted beef, a loaf of bread, 3 ginger cakes, and a few devices of his own making. Besides what was in the saddlebags, he had only a broad-brimmed hat, a belt purse, and a fairly nondescript dagger. His first stop would be the central market to buy a sword, and then he would go to the horse fair at Anstier's Field for a mount. This bitch brought a razor that is said, literally, a razor he would hardly needed to use. He brought slippers. He brought multiple changes of clothing. He brought brandy and ginger cakes. He brought a bag of soaps. This motherfucker is in for a world of hurt. It is going to be ugly. Oh, sweet Jesus. Like, how? All right. So first of all, I'm going to preface this with, I might start crying, so get ready. Guys, I am really excited, and I don't know how many of you saw this post in the Spoil Me planning group and on the Facebook page, but I have started to make enough in commissions that if I am really careful with saving money, the Spoil Me income means that I can actually have a regular traditional wedding next year. And I did not think I was going to get to do that. And while I had reconciled myself to not getting that, I was disappointed because I had a very small wedding the first time I was married. And I really hoped that I would be able to do a bigger, more traditional affair and have everybody there. And I really thought I wasn't going to be able to, and that we would have to do something else. And see, there it goes. There it goes. Tears, tears. So thank you guys for your support. Thank you, Abbey, for commissioning this. Like, pretty much every penny I'm going to be making from Spoil Me from here out is going into a savings for the wedding, or being put towards deposits, or being put towards what's coming up that brought this up for me. So I found a venue that I love, and I intend to put a deposit down for it. And I thought I could do that from here. I thought I could call and tell them, I want this, book me. I love it. And I got in touch with them, and they were like, ooh, no, ma'am. Sorry, we do not take deposits over the phone. You have to come and you have to see the property and sign a contract in person, because we want you to be fully aware of what you're getting and what you're not getting, so that on the day of, when you roll in, you're not going to be like, well, where's this? Where's that? You're going to know what the property is like, and you're going to have no surprises. So I'm sorry, but you have to do this in person. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I was able to find a affordable flight to Orlando. And I'm only going to be there. I'm flying in on Sunday night, and I'm going to arrive at like 1 a.m. Tuesday morning. And I'm going to spend all day Tuesday. I'm flying in. I'm arriving 1 a.m. Monday morning. I'm spending all day Monday and all day Tuesday visiting the venue, going to caterers, doing taste tests, doing samples at cake decorators, and getting like a makeup and hair test. And I am planning to bring a backpack with my planner, my laptop computer, charging cables, a change in underwear, a toothbrush, and like probably like a leave-in hair conditioner spray in a mini travel bottle, and deodorant. And I'm probably just going to bring that. And I will wear the same clothes for 3 days straight because I do not feel like packing shit. And that is what it's going to be. And this guy is out here acting like he's going to pretend to be a traveler, which I am assuming is supposed to be the version in this universe of the Romani, because they go by travelers. And he thinks that he can pull out a gold bar and slippers, and they are going to think that he is a fucking traveler. Oh, sure, buddy. Has he ever met a traveler? Does he know what this is? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Good Lord. And then when the guards wind up coming upon him, they're like, wait, you don't have the tattoos. Your horse doesn't have any of the, like, clan, there's, like, I guess beads and things that get, like, twisted into their manes. There should be all kinds of tells about how he would be living. And the primary one is that a traveler doesn't check into an inn, and he doesn't tip a silver ingot for somebody to take care of his horse, which even I know, that's insane. Where's your brass and your copper, buddy? I don't know what the lower denomination is, but you need to have gone to an ATM and gotten some 20s out, and then you go to a fucking convenience store or a bodega and you buy a stick of gum and you get back some ones here, buddy. What are you doing? No. Walking around with gold bars. Abby's out here asking me, why don't I have slippers and a bottle of brandy in my bag? You know what? I should bring a flask because I bet I'm going to need it. This is going to be an intense couple of days. I'm sure it'll be fun in its way, but I have no doubt that I'm going to be exhausted. So, yeah, this is hysterical in its way. And I love how it's written that he's just so unaware. No idea. And he's like wanting to not be recognized, but he also wants the benefits of being who he is. And this is the thing. This is what people who have less privilege are talking about when they say that somebody is appropriating. That the person who is doing the appropriation wants all the beauty and benefits of taking on a certain culture, but they want to also maintain the privilege that they have as a privileged party. So if we're talking about a white person who has decided that they are going to speak a certain way and wear cornrows and whatever, they want to take parts of black culture, but they also want to maintain the privilege of being white and being treated the way that they are because they are white. And that's low-key what he's doing here. He wants to go to the market and go to the yard where they're selling horses. And he wants to be able to be a traveler and fly under the radar, but also get the benefit when he's haggling of being seen as royalty and being treated a certain way as he passes through the crowds and all of this. And what's infuriating is that he's doing such a bad job of looking like a traveler. I have no doubt he is benefiting from some of the privilege of looking like he's got some money, despite trying to be someone else. The fact that he isn't succeeding as well as he wants to means that he's probably being treated better than he would otherwise. So, yeah, he's super annoying. With the help of the very useful guide, Sam had already decided on his first stop. He would take the narrow way along the isthmus Then he would go to the South Road, but the very useful guide mentioned a particularly good inn at Ochre that served a famous jellied eel. Y'all, this motherfucker has a trip advisor on his phone, and he's like, I'm going to go and help my friend who's in danger, but have you been to Magnolia Bakery, though? Because I hear that it's a must-see. Voodoo Donuts is like kind of on the way. So what am I going to go and save him and not have tried one of these donuts? They have marshmallows on them, guys. Listen, like, can you, like, if you try to maintain this ridiculous fiction that he's just a traveler, and these guards went through his stuff and found the very useful guide in his bag, dog-eared, fucking highlighter marks on it. Can you imagine? I cannot. This is so funny. Poor Sammy's so stupid. Oh, God. So, yeah, he's like trying to figure out the rest of the way once he gets past this inn, telling himself that he doesn't need to worry about it, that he can think of it later. Like, he just keeps on being worried about the total wrong things, getting prepared for the total wrong things. And he gets to the inn at the end of the day, and he had thought, I'll get to the inn and then I'll decide what I'm going to do. But he gets to the inn and he's so fucking exhausted because he is not used to this kind of travel alone. And he also only slept for like 3 hours the night before. So in combination, he is a disaster. So he rents like the best room in the place, because of course he does, and goes upstairs, passes out, wakes up at one point to like take his boots off, wakes up another time to take a piss, and then falls back into bed. And it's not until the morning that he's finally woken up by Sergeant Cuke and Constable Tep, which I'm sorry guys, but your names are terrible. He's like, what do you want? And they're like, you definitely aren't a traveler. You are dressed wrong. You talk wrong. You look wrong. You're tipping wrong. You're riding the wrong kind of horse. You're staying in the wrong kind of room. Not a single thing about this is correct, buddy. Sorry. And they start to look through his shit, even though he's like, you can't do that. Yeah, they can, though. Because, honestly, even if they can't, you're so bad at this, you deserve it. And he starts to, like, sort of toss his head in disdain. And his hair flies out of the way of the charter mark on his head. And the two of them, these two guard guys, see it and kind of flip out. Because they assume if he's got a charter mark on his head and he's kind of a nobody, that it has to be either corrupted or fake. And either one of those is somebody who uses free magic, which means somebody who is bad news. So they like grip him up and start to go through his shit for serious now because they suspect something is amiss. And they run across the fucking Abhorsen bells, which are not exclusive to Abhorsen. They are used by necromancers in general. And they are sure at this point that this kid is bad news with a capital B, capital N, and they start to call for help. And guess what he does? This tool bag. First, he tries a curse or magic or whatever you want to call it that will make one of them blind, and the other one is meant to, let's see, one mark flew true, sudden blindness, but Cuke must have been some small charter mage himself, for he countered the spell with a general warding. Then, before Sam could even get up, Cuke's poignard stabbed out, sinking deep into his leg just above the knee. And at this point, he uses like his ability, not Sam, but Cuke shouts necromancer and a rescue, which I think from the way this is written is something that can be sensed by a bunch of different people. So he's summoning for a lot of help. And Sam, in his wisdom, Sam instructively did what he'd been taught to save his life in the event of an assassination attempt. Drawing several charter marks in his mind, he let them grow in his throat and roared out a death spell to strike everyone unprotected in the room. Yo, they aren't attempting an assassination, though. They were trying to question you. They were trying to get other people here to help. They were not planning to just slit your fucking throat. But sure, go off, I guess. So they fucking drop to the floor, and he, of course, assumes that he has killed them, which I, of course, assumed as well, because I forgot that he can sense death. I'm so over time. Oh, well. He, like the little dum-dum that he is, flees the scene, gets on the horse, rides without tending to his wound until he is almost ready to pass out from blood loss, and then, collapses and just barely manages to use a spell to knit his flesh back together. But he's already lost so much, blood that when he tries to immediately stand up again, shockingly, it doesn't work out for him, and he collapses yet again. He bled so much, guys, that the boot that he was wearing that reached to his knee filled with blood and overflowed. Think of that for a second. How much liquid, if you were wearing a fairly loose knee boot, it would take to fill that boot to the brim until overflowing. And that's how much blood he lost. And when he winds up coming back to himself, he's sitting there thinking about how he killed these two guys and that this is the most shameful thing he's ever done. He doesn't know how he's going to get out of this, that nobody can find him where he's at, that he clearly is so unprepared, that there's no inns nearby for him to go to, that he is going to wind up dying on the side of the road and they're going to find his body years later. And is really pretty much just feeling sorry for himself because he did something really fucking idiotic. Anybody could have told him. And all of a sudden somebody's like, oh, a lost prince weeping in the forest. I would have thought you had a little bit more spine, but I guess I'm wrong again. And guess who it is? It's Mogget. Mogget, motherfuckers. Mogget to instill some deeply needed humility and sense into this stupid boy. What a mess this kid is. And he, of course, is what's talking to me? What knows what I am and is in the trees? This is some sort of evil blah, blah, blah. But no, it's Mogget who can sense that he is needed and comes to Sameth because that's part of his binding, is being of service to the Abhorsen. And yet he is not entirely free of the binding that makes him sleep, apparently. So he continuously falls asleep in the middle of sentences, which is kind of adorable. So Mogget's asking him what he's doing. What is he out here for? And he tries to explain about his friend Nicholas. And he says that he killed these two guys, and Mogget's like, you fucking idiot. No, you didn't. Did you feel them die? No, you didn't. Also, they're royal servants, these people. They obviously have protection from your dumbass little spell. So shut up and stop making drama, okay? And he finally feels a little bit better and is able to collect his mind and actually talk to Mogget and eats some bread and some beef and whatever. He's got that dried beef jerky. And he asks Mogget what he should do with him when he's asleep. And Mogget is able to be just awake enough that he's like, stick me in your saddlebag and wake me up when you've got some fish, which seems fair. And Mogget had said something about a lightning trap that Nick had gone to look for. But you didn't like the sound of it, but you fell asleep before saying anything else. I was wondering if it had anything to do with the necromancer. I was just saying you started to talk about it and wondered if it had to do with Clore of the Mask or the other necromancer, the one I fought. And he asks about what the lightning trap and what it is. And Mogget's like, I don't know what it is, but it sounds bad. Just saying. Lightning's pretty fucking powerful. And the fact that it's something that traps that power seems like you don't want people of questionable personality taking that over. I'm trying to find exactly where it is that Mogget mentions the lightning trap and the fact that, let's see, very clumsy to use that spell. It had been the first time he'd worn the dunce cap and stood in the corner. Bloody was not in the accepted vocabulary for the young gentleman of Thorn Preparatory School. He lay down himself with his sword under his hand and Sprout's saddle under his head. And for a few moments, Sam thought about staying awake to keep watch, but then, of course, he didn't, because of course he didn't. And I'm trying to I can't find it, because I guess it was earlier on. Oh, here it is, yes. He was supposed to wait for me to meet him at the wall, but he's already crossed. He's hired a guide, and he's going to look for some old legend called the Lightning Trap. And of course, that's where Mother and Father think the enemy is. The lightning trap near the Red Lake, muttered Mogget. The king and the Abhorsen in Ancestiere, a friend of the Abhorsen in waiting on the other side of the wall, the Clare sightless. This does not bode well, and the connections cannot be purely coincidence. Something stirs. And he says at one point, you're safe from Roger for now, but whatever has stirred has woken me in a little bit, and it might wake him too, so who knows? And that is the end of the chapter. So I'm over time. I'm so over. But I had to talk about it. So yeah, this was fun. Thank you again very much to Abbey for commissioning this. Thank you everybody who has been commissioning and supporting the show. And please know that your money is going towards something that is very important to me and something that I just didn't think that I was ever going to have. And that's huge. It's just huge for me. So I'm sorry you were so outraged by everybody in this section. It's, you know what, they're teenagers, it's fine. I guess Sam at this point is older than a teenager. Like, he's like 20, right? I think. But he's just so sheltered. And for her part, Lirael is a teenager. So they're both about 19-ish. I keep saying that she's 17. I keep fucking that up, but yeah. All right, cool. Well, guys, thank you again very much for listening. I'll be seeing you again soon with a new episode, and until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.